Preventing China from spying on U.S. military bases, the Department of War is teaming up with the Department of Agriculture to better protect America's farmland. War Secretary Pete Hegseth speaking alongside the Secretary of Agriculture Wednesday, highlighting the need to protect farmland from foreign adversaries.
Something people may not know is that shortly after 9/11, U.S. forces in Afghanistan uncovered al-Qaeda training manuals that specifically targeted America's agriculture for attack. Bottom line is we're not dealing with hypotheticals here. The threat is real, it is asymmetric, and it must be neutralized.
China alone owns 265,000 acres of American agricultural land. Back in 1983, it was only 2,000 acres. These actions expose strategic vulnerabilities in America's food and agriculture supply chain. Thankfully, President Trump, the first president to truly understand that protecting the homeland must begin with protecting our farmland.
Last year, the Department of Agriculture announced the National Farm Security Action Plan. Its goal is to elevate American farmland as a point of national security. Since then, the Trump administration worked with various states to end the purchase of American farmland by foreign adversaries, including China. Over the years, Chinese companies have been purchasing land near military bases across the U.S. Several examples include a Chinese food producer that purchased farmland near Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota. Then there was a Chinese energy company who bought land near Laughlin Air Force Base in southern Texas, and a Chinese-linked crypto firm snapped up land near Francis E. Warren Air Base in Wyoming. On Capitol Hill Tuesday, House lawmakers are sounding the alarm over foreign money flowing into American nonprofits. They say groups tied to the Chinese Communist Party are using U.S. tax breaks to fund protests, push radical policies, and influence elections. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Foreign actors fueling disruption and illegal activity in America using a dark web of tax-exempt groups.
The Chinese Communist Party funding American nonprofits at the center of a contentious hearing on Capitol Hill. The House Ways and Means Committee, which oversees tax policy, focused on how money tied to the CCP flows into U.S. tax-exempt groups. Money they say fuels protests, pushes radical policies, and still gets taxpayer subsidies.
The People's Forum, an American tax-exempt group, hosts events and courses pushing Communist Party propaganda, incites violent protests and riots.
Operate YouTube channels to reach youth. Others operate fake news websites. Still more lobby Congress.
Federal property vandalized at Union Station, American flags burned and police officers assaulted, airports blocked at JFK and LAX. This is not grassroots protest. It is a repeatable system for paralyzing American infrastructure on demand, financed through U.S. tax law and aligned with a hostile foreign power.
One example is billionaire Neville Roy Singham, a former U.S. tech executive now based in Shanghai. The panel says Singham funnels millions to shell companies that then fund nonprofits, which in turn train protesters and even spread pro-CCP propaganda.
Neville Roy Singham donated over $20 million to the People's Forum through shell companies.
Witnesses say that the problem is the tax code itself. They argue loopholes allow unlimited foreign cash into nonprofits without disclosure.
There is no real requirement that discloses anywhere that they are receiving foreign funds. This is a huge threat to foreign interference in our elections.
Many also tying the funding directly to swaying U.S. policy.
Most recently, nonprofit groups have joined a push to defund ICE and attack law enforcement after receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations linked to the Chinese Communist Party.
The witnesses are pushing Congress to close loopholes in federal law that allows unlimited foreign cash flows into nonprofits. Some states already are moving in that direction, with Alabama and Michigan just passing laws last week to block foreign money in ballot measures. And a bill is now moving its way through Congress that would do that on the federal level. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Joining NTD Steve Lance to discuss how the CCP is taking advantage of American nonprofits is Steve Yates, Senior China Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation.
Steve, this is really hard to believe. I want to play a soundbite from one of the witnesses today on Capitol Hill, Bruce Dubinsky.
We simply do not know how much foreign money is flowing through the U.S. nonprofits or for what purposes. This lack of visibility creates real national security risks when foreign donors, including foreign governments, state-linked entities, sanctioned actors, or cutouts, use charitable structures to move money, gain influence, or mask illicit activity.
Steve, you could help us understand, is this actually happening? And break down what gain influence and mask illicit activity means when it comes to how the CCP is operating in the U.S.
Well, you're right that there are many layers to this challenge. So we'll start at the easiest part. There's foreign and domestic. And under the current tax code, when these contributions are coming into nonprofit public policy research institutions, there are many. I work at one. There are not the same requirements to disclose the sources of those fundings that would, say, exist for a political action committee or a political party or things like that. So when you end up with activities that result in demonstrators or disruptors going onto campus and getting in the way of Jewish students going to class, or you end up with organized people going in to interfere with legal operations to remove illegal migrant criminals, you've crossed over from, say, the public policy research function into political action. And so the input nozzle for the money is through this nonprofit that is not meant to be used that way. And so there isn't this public disclosure or accountability for foreign funds.
So to your point, there was another witness today on Capitol Hill who was giving examples of foreign nonprofits, Steve, and what they're advocating for in the U.S. Here's that.
Abolishing private cars, eating less meat, training judges, protests, suing energy companies. These are just a few examples of what is being financed by foreign money, and it must stop.
So these were not necessarily Chinese nonprofits, but they were found to have some ties with the Chinese Communist Party, Steve. Why would these charities, and let's say in particular the ones being influenced by China, take up these sort of causes in the U.S.?
Well, at least in my assessment, there is somewhat of a neo-Maoist Marxist movement that is consistent across a lot of these different protest movements. I don't consider them to be organic and genuine protest movements. People can judge whether that's a fair or unfair judgment on my part. But when you look at it, there is just a ringing resonance with what I studied out of the Cultural Revolution about how these movements are really meant to break up society, to disrupt fundamental institutions. Everything from the family to faith institutions to the regular functioning of government, the social compact. And they do all of this. Why? It is to break apart. You don't have these foreign funds coming in necessarily to promote the positive value of the American family. You don't see these funds coming in to celebrate free enterprise and success. You don't find the positive side of this, so it's really in the disruption and breaking. That's where, say, the Communist Party of China and the United Front might have common cause with actors in other theaters of the world.
Steve, you just mentioned the United Front. Break down what that is.
Well, United Front is a broad category we use. It's actually taken from what the Communist Party organ calls itself, but it's basically the outward-facing manipulation machine of the Communist Party. It can be used in somewhat positive ways to socialize overseas compatriots, but it's also used as a way to manipulate information, manipulate people to the advantage of the interests of the Communist Party of China. And so when you have these third parties that are not necessarily a part of the United Front, they can be co-opted by funding through them, outreach that's under the umbrella of cultural outreach. Most Americans are good-natured and they'd want to think positive things about the Chinese people, and so they'll engage, but they don't understand that beneath that surface there's really this aim to capture and use you for the purpose of disrupting American society.
And Steve, perhaps another pillar under the United Front is political warfare.
Yeah.
There was one witness today who was talking about how nonprofits have also become major sources of political spending. Let's have a listen.
And drives anyone seeking to influence our politics to send money not to parties and candidates where it would be disclosed, but into nonprofits where the money is hidden, sometimes under multiple layers, and also where the money is unlimited, both in dollar amounts and also in its source. Foreign governments and foreign nationals like Hans Wies can give unlimited amounts.
So, Steve, how could this type of loophole potentially be exploited by CCP actors?
Well, number one, because in America there are a lot of areas where you can have very vigorous public policy advocacy that an average American would say, that sounds pretty political or ideological, but that's actually very lawful and encouraged under our tax code to engage in research and then advocate for the policies that you believe in. It's different than, say, going to Congress and saying, vote up or down on House Resolution 123 or what have you, not a specific vote. It also isn't endorsing a specific candidate. That's where it goes over into these other entities that can advocate for parties and candidates and outcomes for bills and legislation. So that's sort of a gray zone that exists. It unfortunately does create an opportunity for this other kind of influence to come in. And this is, I think, a clever use by some of our adversaries and challengers to find a way in. Again, the key litmus test is, though, if we have government watchdog agencies that want to protect America, are these groups primarily looking to disrupt, or are they looking to build? And when you find it's sort of by their fruits shall they be known. And so if you have them giving money to the American Red Cross and they're helping people in disaster relief, I think we have very minimal political risk when it comes to things like that. But when you find them directly tied to agitator organizations, protest movements that go from peaceful marching into actual violence, then they've crossed a line. And I think that's really where we're going to have to work out, how do we craft statute better, and how do we equip our government to be a better provider of our common defense, which is one of the first reasons we have a federal government.
NVIDIA is being told follow strict U.S. licensing rules or risk losing access to China's AI chip market. At a congressional hearing Tuesday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the terms were negotiated with the State Department and that NVIDIA must live with them. One major sticking point is a proposed Know Your Customer requirement aimed at preventing China's military from accessing NVIDIA's H200 chips. Last week, Reuters reported that the company hasn't agreed to these terms, raising national security concerns. China had agreed on H200 chip imports for its tech giants Alibaba and Tencent, as well as AI startup DeepSeek. All three firms reportedly have close ties to the Chinese military. The sale of these chips were allowed after President Trump and China's Xi reached a trade truce in South Korea last October. The agreement also gave a one-year delay to a rule blocking U.S. tech exports to thousands of Chinese firms, as long as they aren't tied to the military. FBI Director Kash Patel says President Trump supports reviving the China Initiative. The program, which discontinued under the Biden administration, targeted criminal activity linked to the Chinese Communist Party.
This is just another disastrous example of failing to protect national security by the Biden administration. Who takes down an initiative against our number one adversary, the CCP, when they are not only conducting counter-espionage activities here in the homeland against Americans, but also overseas, and importing illegal biopathogens to harm our way of life? That is an intentional, poor decision to the detriment of our national security. President Trump came in and said, we're reversing course. We don't necessarily need a new initiative. We just need the FBI all in against the CCP.
The FBI has heavily reprioritized its counterintelligence efforts to combat the threat from the Chinese regime. Patel says the renewed efforts have already led to a 40% increase in Chinese espionage arrests during the first year of Trump's second term. According to 2020 statistics, CCP-related cases account for roughly half of the FBI's nearly 5,000 active counterintelligence cases. The Bureau is employing enhanced multi-layered strategies to disrupt economic espionage and cyber attacks, including operations like Volt Typhoon. Last month, officials uncovered an illegal biological lab in Las Vegas, Nevada, and in late 2023, a similar setup was found in Reedley, California. In this case, investigators reportedly discovered materials possibly associated with infectious diseases, including hepatitis, COVID-19, HIV, malaria, and other potentially dangerous pathogens. Both cases are tied to a Chinese national who's currently awaiting trial. The FBI is now investigating links to biological labs in Las Vegas and California. The new president of Honduras says he's considering switching the country's diplomatic ties from China back to Taiwan. President Nasra Asfura spoke on the issue following a meeting with President Trump. NTD's Joy Chu has the story from Taiwan.
President Trump met with Honduran President Nasra Asfura in Mar-a-Lago on Saturday. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the two leaders share America First values and maintain a close partnership on security issues. Following the meeting, Asfoura said he may restore diplomatic ties with Taiwan and cut relations with Beijing. In 2023, Honduras dropped its 82-year relationship with Taiwan and recognized China instead. That decision hit the shrimp industry hard, after Chinese buyers failed to make up for the roughly 40% of exports once bought by Taiwan, despite earlier promises. About 60% of shrimp farms shut down, leaving tens of thousands out of work.
As Beijing ramps up pressure on governments to pick sides, 21 countries have switched diplomatic ties from Taiwan to China since 2000. Today, Taiwan is left with just 12 diplomatic allies worldwide. What happens when a singer in China looks like the country's top leader? This is not a hypothetical. One singer bears a striking resemblance to Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping, and he has shared his unusual experiences on social media. Chinese singer and actor Liu Keqing has reportedly been banned on Chinese social media platforms. The stated reason behind this was over so-called appearance violations. The only thing he or his parents did wrong was having a face that strongly resembles Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. In 2019, Liu opened a Douyin account, the Chinese version of TikTok, and racked up 370,000 likes in just 2 days. He later wrote, "It's not really because I sing well, but because I look like a national leader." As users began mentioning Xi Jinping by name in the comments, Liu's videos and posts were deemed sensitive, and his Douyin account was taken down. After that, he tried opening another account. In a 2025 post, Liu said his Douyin accounts were repeatedly suspended over the past 5 years simply because of how he looks. Protests continue in China, most over money as the economy slows. Farmers in a village in Wuhan say authorities took their land 10 years ago, but they have yet to receive any compensation. They began petitioning for their rights in late January, but with no results. Workers at an oil company in eastern China say the company has failed to pay their wages. On February 6th, they gathered outside the company's offices to fight for their unpaid salaries. Migrant workers are accusing a maintenance company in northern China's Shenxi province of owning several months of wages. On February 5th, they hung banners at the company's premises demanding payment. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For On the Clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.